Hey guys, TheAirsoftTech here, and welcome back. Today we're going to be going over some gun work I did for a local airsoft player. So about a week ago I was scrolling down Facebook and I noticed a post in a group called Kentucky Airsoft Community, which I'm a member of. And it's about this guy who's having some problems with his airsoft gun. You know, the first shot of every single burst would kind of fall out the end of the barrel. You know, the next couple shots would either double feed or jam, and then he goes on to describe the problem in a little bit further detail. And I think, you know what, hey, I've got some free time, first of all, and second of all, I desperately need content for my YouTube channel. So I comment down below and I tell him, hey, I'm willing to look at your gun for you. So we meet up, he hands me off his gun, and I take it home to work on it. And today we're going to be talking about how I fixed all those problems and did some just really basic generic tuning. Alright, so the gun that I got to work on is this EMG F4-15. It's actually a very nice gun, externally speaking, right out of the gate. It feels nice. Now this is not a gun review because I really don't do gun reviews, I do more tech stuff. But just the uniqueness of the design of the gun is kind of what catches the eye. And so internally, it's fairly nice. Stock speaking, it's okay. You can get it for like $330 on e-bike. Whether or not it's worth a $330 price tag, it's up to you. But let's stop talking about the gun and reviewing the gun. Let's actually talk about what I did to the gun. Alright, so like I said, this F4-15 by EMG is actually very nice externally. You know, it's got some fun little features like a functional bolt catch and release and all that stuff there. It's got this interesting, you know, safe, semi, and auto switch here, where it doesn't have the markings that a normal, you know, M4 would have. It's got the AR-15, you know, safe and semi locking to it. Also, it's got a more so vertical grip than a regular grip. So, you know, a regular grip is going to be a little bit more angled than this, back towards the buffer tube, and this one is more vertical. It's more canted towards the front. Upon first glance and first getting this gun to work on, I figured this would, you know, make shimming motor height a little difficult, but actually it turns out it really didn't have an effect at all. Just the way that they designed the internal portion of the grip and the way the motor actually lines up in there kind of, you know, compensates for this grip being canted forward. The motor's really about right here. So it's where it should be in the grip. The grip is just canted forward a little bit to give it that more modern and aggressive look. So that's just some first thoughts about the gun. Was kind of looking at it before I opened it up to work on it and thought that might cause a problem, but it really didn't. So let's move on to internal stuff that I did. So I'll be totally honest, whenever I got this gun to work on, I did not really test out the issue that the person described it having. I kind of just opened it up and started working on it. And the reason why I did that is kind of the reason why I always do that with guns that I receive to work on, is that I just kind of wipe a clean slate, work on it myself, do everything that I would normally do to a gun, and then test it out once I'm done. And so, you know, he was describing this, you know, one BB kind of fall at the end of the barrel, you know, the next two would, you know, jam or double feed, just wouldn't shoot right, stuff like that. So, you know, that could be a hop-up problem, more than likely. Sometimes it's a gearbox problem, but almost always is it a hop-up problem. Usually spacing or your hop-up bucking is applying too much pressure in its in the hop-up arm where it really should be relaxed. And so you usually have too large of a hop-up nub, or something's wrong with your bucking, it's improperly installed, something like that. Or, you know, you have improper spacing to where there's a gap between the gearbox and the hop-up chamber. So we'll kind of go down that road here in a second. Now, all the stuff I did internally, you know, I did the standard AOE correction, shimming, air seal perfection, all that kind of stuff that you always do to a gun when you get it to work on. One of the things that I found interesting was just kind of the fact that the gearbox shell feels a little bit weaker. Now, it really might not be, but it feels kind of like that G&G sport line kind of gearbox shell quality, maybe a little bit tougher, but it just doesn't look that tough. I'll be honest, that's just kind of the impression I got. So that's that. Another really cool thing is that it has an integral MOSFET underneath of the trigger. You can see that in the previous picture. Stuff like that, a simple quick change spring guide, the kind of usual stuff that modern airsoft guns have nowadays. On the other side, you actually can get a little peek hole into the AOE correction that I did. The piston's a steel rack tooth piston. Fairly nice gun overall. The gears feel a little on the cheaper side. I really wouldn't push them probably past an M130, but that's what I would do. And the really interesting thing about this gun is the way that the motor grip works. It actually just kind of pops out like that. And this little kind of fin here helps direct the motor a little better so that it's not at an off angle. And that was really nice. And this just slips right on. No screws involved. I really like that because I cannot stand having to screw everything back on. It's my least favorite part about shimming a gun is screwing everything together to test just a little bit of bevel movement. And then add a 0.01 millimeter shim to do it all over again and test a little bit of bevel movement. Hate doing that. So that was really cool. That was really nice. The fact that that's really easy to work with. Got that whole setup working, plugged it up to a LiPo, or got this whole setup tuned, put back together and working. Plugged it up to a LiPo battery and it immediately started double shooting on an 11.1 volt LiPo. Doesn't double shoot on a 7.4 volt LiPo. Thought the cutoff lever looked totally fine. Really, I don't see why it was double shooting. Then I put the whole thing back together, just kind of, we'll fast forward real quick, put the whole thing back together and then realized that it's only shooting like 280 FPS. The spring did feel extremely weak and actually filled in there and like really easily slide it back and forth because it's so weak. So I will be swapping that out for an ASG M115 here momentarily. So that's all the stuff I did in there. Hopefully that fixes the double shot issue on an 11.1 volt LiPo. The person who owns this gun wasn't really describing that issue, so I'd assume he's probably not using an 11.1 volt LiPo standard with this gun. And then moving on to the hop-up chamber, I really didn't do a whole lot here. Honestly, it looks like a Crytac hop-up chamber because it's even got a Crytac bucking in there. So I really didn't do, like I said, I really didn't do a whole lot to this hop-up chamber setup. I basically just took it out, cleaned everything, cleaned the barrel really well, sealed the hop-up chamber really well with some Teflon tape, and then I noticed there's a lot of slack in the hop-up chamber as it sits in the upper receiver in connection with the gearbox shell. Just a lot of slack going back and forth. And so that can cause some double feeding and some misfeeds and all this bad stuff. So I went ahead and took the spring off of the hop-up chamber that's supposed to push it back against the gearbox shell. Those almost never work appropriately and just have a lot of slack in them. And instead of using that spring, I used a bunch of plastic shims that I 3D printed, and those turned out really, really well. And then I just put a rubber O-ring up against it to kind of hold them all together because the O-ring sits on there way tighter than the shims do. So that just kind of holds them up against the hop-up chamber. And so all this put on here just kind of perfectly shims the hop-up chamber in the upper receiver against the gearbox shell so that it stays exactly where it's supposed to be, and there's no give as the hop-up chamber is in the upper receiver. So let me get that ASG M115 installed, then we will chrono it and see how it is shooting. So real quick, I just want to talk about this quick change spring guide system. Most quick change spring guide systems require you to dismantle the gun to the gearbox shell, pull the whole thing out, and then you can take out the spring guide and then therefore the spring. Now, that's super helpful for beginners, that's super helpful for experienced techs. It makes, putting the gun together a lot easier. But it's not really a true quick change spring guide. A true quick change spring guide system would be like this one, where you just take off the buffer tube and you can remove the spring and the spring guide. So that's what this is. It's so much easier to work on. I don't have to take the whole gun apart to the lower gear to the gearbox shell just to take out the spring. So I'm going to pop in this ASG M115 and then we'll chrono it. Alright, just going to demonstrate the gun's cycling, trigger response, how it sounds, all that stuff for the owner. So we got it hooked up to an 11.1 volt LiPo battery. That ASG M115 is installed in the gun. The microphone is off of the camera because whenever I have the microphone on the camera, it tends to, and I cycle a gun when the mic's on the camera, it tends to peak the audio and it just sounds really terrible for the listener. So, safe, clearly works well, semi-auto. Pretty snappy trigger response there. All stock parts, by the way. Full auto. Sounds really good. Alright, so as you saw, the gun chrono is between 335 and 340 FPS with a .25 gram BB. This stock spring, or I don't even know if it's the stock spring or not, it might have been just a quick spring change to get the gun to CQB level. This spring was getting about 270 FPS, so massive improvement after installing that ASG M115 spring, and the double cycle is no longer a problem with an 11 volt LiPo with that stronger spring. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a really simple tune-up slash troubleshooting issue that really didn't require a whole lot of troubleshooting. Just basic, standard, good tuning made the gun shoot great, and hopefully it's going to perform really well for the owner. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you would, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, that is. Comment down below what you think of this gun. It's actually really, really cool. I like the external design. The internals leave a little bit to be desired for, but that can always be fixed. Real quick, if you have not already gone to go check it out, please go check out the Teespring store, where we do have a couple really cool tech-themed airsoft shirts that I think you guys might like. But that's going to have to do it for this video. Again, thank you so much for watching, but I will see you guys in the next episode of whatever the heck I'm doing. Until then, stay tuned, techs.